Okay, it's 5:30, so I think we'll get started. Uh, Jathan, I don't know if you have any housekeeping items to take care of before we begin.
Other than reminding people one more time, if they haven't entered their email address in the chat, to please do so.
Okay, and at the end of the presentation, when people want to ask questions, we'll give instructions then with the raised hand.
Correct.
Okay, great. Then with that, I'd like to say good evening. Welcome. I'm Judy Clark, the Director of Engineering Services, and I'd like to welcome you to our second public meeting for the Winston Waterways project. This one was set up specifically to address your questions about the easements that we need from you. But before we get started, Commissioner Rashine would like to say a few words. Commissioner, welcome.
Thank you, Judy, so much. And wave your arms. My Wi-Fi was going in and out for a second. So, okay, good. And go like, if you can't hear me for some reason, but
I can hear you.
thank you so much to the entire team. Thank you and welcome everybody to this important meeting tonight for Winston Waterways and the Roadways Adaptation Project that we're going to be discussing, where staff will be providing you with information on the easement needed for your property and why it's important for this project. As your commissioner, I fully support this project in my district, and I hope you can too when you hear the information being provided this evening. We know that you are already experiencing sunny day flooding on some of the roads in the Winston Waterways neighborhood. Our road staff has been out over the years during king tides to record and document the amount of flooding and locations to support the sea level rise planning efforts that the county has undertaken to get us to this point. I've witnessed the flooding myself, having been one of your former member or neighbors for, I don't know, over a decade. There are only 4 neighborhoods in the entire county that may have a roadway resilience project implemented over the next few years, and you are one of them. I know there are challenges to this project, and easements may be one of those parts. We are here tonight to provide you with information and then take each of your questions. With that, I hand it back to staff to begin the meeting. And thank you so much for your time this evening and for hearing what we have to say about this amazing project.
Thank you, Commissioner. Oh,
Judy, I'm
yes.
sorry, it's a little bit unexpected. We have a few people in the chat stating that they can't hear. So I think they need to just check their audio settings. If you go down to that bottom left button that says audio and click on it and click on the speakers that you're using. I know oftentimes they get changed when you go from one system to another.
Yeah, they stated resolved.
It's resolved? Okay, good. Thank you,
Okay,
Jody.
great. All right. Moving on. As I mentioned, this is our second public meeting. We have a brief presentation tonight that gives an overview of the project and then gets into the details of the easements. For anyone that attended our first meeting on February 10th, it'll be a little bit repetitive in the beginning parts, but we want to make sure that everyone has information about the project, and then we can answer your questions. So we have our project team here tonight. As I said, I'm Judy Clark, the Director of Engineering from Monroe County. Joining me from the county, we have Rhonda Haig, who is our Chief Resilience Officer. We have Leo Montiel, who is our Engineering Project Manager. We're also joined by our County Administrator, Christine Hurley. We have our lead design consultant, Juliana Ortiz from HDR Engineering, and she's joined by a sub-consultant and drainage specialist from WSP Engineering, Greg Corning. And then rounding out the team, we have Aaron Deedy from Aaron DDPA. Aaron has assisted the county with our policy and regulatory issues related to resilience and adaptation for over 10 years. So with that, I'll turn it over to Aaron.
Next slide. There we go. So this is our agenda this evening. We're going to provide a little bit of a recap for those of you that attended our meeting in February, or if you did not, You'll get enough of the project information to have a basic understanding as to what this road elevation project is about. We're going to discuss why we are fixing the roads in Monroe County, the design approach, the proposed design for this project. We're going to discuss private property easements as applied, and then applied to this project for the Winston Waterways road elevation. And then we're going to discuss what's next, and we're going to take your questions. Next slide, please. So why are we here? We do know that we are seeing different types of flooding impact different areas of the Keys. From a surface level standpoint, we're seeing more tidal flooding from increasing sea level rise. That is usually more pronounced in the fall, October, November, December timeframes when we have the higher high tides. We're also seeing increased groundwater. The problem with the increased groundwater is it is diminishing our ability to effectively drain the roads with the existing drainage systems that are based on gravity. And so with that, we are designing these road elevation projects to address these realities, the loss of drainage from groundwater and the increased surface water inundation that we are seeing on the roads. The county has also secured federal and state funding to address these issues and pay for a significant part of the upfront capital cost or construction of the project. And the easements that we're going to discuss this evening are necessary to get the permits to implement these projects. Next slide. And so why are we fixing the roads? Monroe County has been at this for a while in terms of developing and designing road elevation projects for certain key areas throughout the county to make the community more resilient to these current and future flooding impacts that you're going to see more of over time. And so we're trying to proactively, in certain circumstances, proactively address those future flood risks, but address the current flood risks and issues that you're seeing now. These are going to worsen over time as we see increased tidal inundation and increased groundwater levels. And so the benefit is that these projects will preserve access to your homes over the long term, increase the value of the homes and the desirability of the community to live there because you can get in and out with drier roads, and address the level of funding that we've secured, over $51.5 million combined federal and state dollars. That money is likely not going to be available in the future. So we have to meet future grant or certain grant timelines and permitting timelines and milestones to be able to secure those dollars to begin construction of the project. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague now, Juliana, to talk about the design approach for the road elevation project and the drainage system.
All right, thank you, Erin. So Erin already went over the impacts that we're seeing in sea level rise in your community. Now, to address sea level rise, the recommended solution is to elevate the roads to meet a minimum elevation of 2.26 NAVD. That elevation came from the 2045 projection directly from the vulnerability study that Erin already mentioned. 17 roads amongst this community were identified. So as we raise the roads, we need to make sure that we provide a smooth connection from the new elevated road to your homes and driveways. In order to do that, the process of doing that or connecting that elevated roads to the existing properties is called harmonization. When we design a project like this, we need to make sure we meet stormwater regulation. And one of the key regulations that is required in this project from South Florida Water Management District is that as we raise the road, we do not cause adverse impacts to the properties. Therefore, providing just raising the roads alone is not sufficient. That needs to be implemented along with a new drainage system. One cannot work without the other. The new proposed modern engineered drainage system is a closed water system. It collects the rainfall and mitigates the impacts of king tides, replacing the gravity system that, as Erin already mentioned, is not functioning. That drainage system includes a collection system with inlets and pipes and a pump station with a backup generator and injection wells. We will later be going over the system of how that functions and the key elements of how they will be placed throughout the community. The proposed design of this project. What you see here is a project layout. Here you see all the roads that are being impacted with the project. The map has been color-coded based on the elevation adjustment from that proposed 2.26 elevation that I previously discussed. The difference between that elevation and existing is why you see the different colors. Red, the areas that are shown in red indicate the lowest lying areas. That's where the road will be raised higher than a foot. So the greatest elevation difference are those roads in red. As we go down, we see in orange are elevation adjustments between a half a foot to a foot. Yellow are those where the elevation is between 0.1 to a half a foot. And then the areas in green that you see are elevations that are already higher than the minimum required elevation, but they were included to maintain connectivity to the drainage system. The blue square that you see there along Tamarind Road on the north side is going to be where the pump station is going to be located. The areas that we will be talking about today are all areas that are part of the red areas approaching Valencia Road. That means that these are areas that are currently very low in elevation. Now I'm going to go over a plan and profile view. What you see here on the top is a view of the road, specifically Spoonville Lane, from the top. All of those roads connecting to Valencia look very similar to this. That is the top view, and as you see on the bottom view will show us the elevation difference or the profile view. What you see in orange are the existing elevation, and what you see in blue is the new proposed road elevation. As we get closer to Valencia, we're going to be raising the road close to 22 inches. That means that as we raise the road, as I previously discussed, we're going to need to harmonize or connect to the existing properties. And the two boxes that you see in blue are in the areas where, as we connect down to the existing, we're going to have to be placing some inlets. This is a typical section of what you see on the roads that I previously discussed that are connecting to Valencia Road. In all of these roads, you'll see valley gutter installed on both sides. The lanes that we're providing are going to meet the criteria, which requires 9-foot lane wide. We're going to be raising to meet the elevation of 2.26, and the stormwater is going to get collected within the right-of-way through the valley gutters directed to the inlets, and then that will be placed at low points. I also want to point out that as we raise the road, we are going to need to connect that proposed elevated roads to existing properties. This second typical section that we have, or the second area that we will be talking about tonight, happens on Valencia Road, specifically north of Mahogany. In this area, we have a very skinny road. By a skinny road, we mean the right-of-way or the space that we have available to construct varies between 15 and 20. This is also one of the roads that has the most significant elevation difference of about 23 inches. And as we go into the typical section, this is a view of the road, a slice of the road looking south. So we have a third scenario here, and is that we have the wetlands on the east side. So what we're going to be doing is, as we raise the road to avoid impacts to the wetlands, we're going to be placing a concrete barrier wall. The road is going to be sloping away from the barrier wall and into a swell or a channel area that is going to allow us to collect the stormwater runoff. This is going to prevent water from flowing into your properties. I did mention that the right-of-way along this road is 15 to 20. That means that in order for us to build the proposed improvements, not only the wider road, but also the swell, we're going to be needing a 12-foot easement along that area. Now I'm going to hand it over to Greg, who is going to be talking about the stormwater management system.
Thanks, Juliana. So as Juliana mentioned, as we raise the roadway, we will be adding an engineered stormwater management system throughout your community. I want to make it clear that the engineered stormwater system is collecting rainfall runoff as its intended purpose. However, we'll also be mitigating some of those king tide impacts as we move forward with the project. And so as you see here in this layout, the yellow is the gravity pipes that are going to be placed along the roadways. And then we're going to have the pump station. There was a question in the comments, so I'll answer it now. The pump station is actually located on Lignbody Road in the undeveloped right-of-way portion shown there in that orange box. That pump station will have a series of different components that'll help not only capture the water, but also treat the water, because we want to make sure that we're protecting the surrounding OFW. That's what we take advantage of in the Florida Keys. And so once it gets through that system, it then gets spread out into a series of injection wells that are shown there in blue throughout the community. Those injection wells are about 120 feet deep, and they're vertically in nature. So you won't see, the only thing you'll see on the community is a manhole on top to get rid of that water. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to just show you a plan and profile of that situation. So Juliana talked to you about the roadway and the roadway inlets that are associated with it. That gravity pipe that I showed you in yellow is there in the center of the roadway. That's going to be a gravity pipe. And then we have those property inlets. That's really the conversation that we're talking about here tonight, which is the easements. And the necessary portion of these easements are to ensure that we're not causing adverse impacts to your properties with the construction of this elevated road. If you go to the next slide, it's gonna help explain that situation. So if you see the green line, that green line is existing conditions, kind of what is happening today. And you can see that some of the flows from your private properties are moving towards the center, which is the low point of the current roadway system. And we should just note that that is obviously not up to county standards. It's not meeting state regulations. So as we now move forward into developing this project and elevating the road to mitigate the king tide and the sea level rise impacts, we still now have to account for that some flow that was coming from your private properties in order to not cause an adverse impact to your specific property. So that's the implementation of those inlets. And it's very important to make sure we note that that is a state regulatory requirement. It's not a requirement that comes from the county. It's saying that we cannot cause any additional flooding on your property as it is today as we implement the project tomorrow. If you go to the next slide, we're going to talk to you a little bit more about those specific regulations and some of the details that we have to develop to ensure that we are meeting the South Florida Water Management District's permit in order to construct the project. So when we develop the project, we develop two different models. We develop a pre-developed condition model, so basically what's happening today, and then we develop a post-condition model simulating what we're going to be implemented with that elevated roadway. And then we take into account all the different types of scenarios. So we look at that groundwater table condition that Aaron was talking about. We look at the rainfall runoff and the different storm events. And all of those things get put into place so as to make sure that we're not causing any adverse impacts to your properties. And therefore, to do that, we had to implement the location of these specific inlets in your private properties, also with the swale along Valencia Road, to ensure that we're not causing those adverse impacts to receive the permit. So now I'm going to turn it over to Erin, and she's going to talk to you about a little bit more on the easements.
Next slide, please. So what is an easement? It's an agreement, and in this circumstance, it's an agreement between the individual property owners and the county to provide permission to use the land, a limited area of the land, for a specific defined purpose while you still remain the owner of the land. For the Winston Waterways Road Elevation and Stormwater Project, we, the county, would be using the easement area to place and maintain the stormwater inlets or the swales that Greg previously discussed and relocate existing utilities that potentially conflict with the proposed project improvements. Next slide. First one, thanks. So we discussed what an easement is, but for this project, there are two types of easements that are needed to implement the project. One is a linear 12-foot easement. That would be where the swale areas would be placed. The other type of easement that is necessary are two different sizes of isolated drainage easements, either 5x5 or 5x10. That's where those inlets will be placed. Why is the easement needed? Well, as previously described, historically, some of the storm water from the adjacent properties of the road flowed from the property onto the road. And once it's elevated, that flow of water cannot occur so we are building the drainage improvements to compensate for that. The South Florida Water Management District also requires that permitted projects can't impact adjacent property owners for the permit that we have to receive. So we have to be able to put those drainage structures in place to make sure that we are not creating that adverse impact from the road elevation. So what are the benefits of the easement? Well, quite simply put, without the easements, the project can't be completed. The road can't be elevated, and the current flooding that you are seeing and the future flooding that we project that you will see more of will not be addressed, and it will worsen over time. The property owners providing the easements will receive some level of flood protection benefit, as well as we talked about. Greg mentioned those areas where the road is going to be flush with the ground elevation. That's where the inlets will be placed, and that will provide that flood protection benefit. And what rights would you have? Now, this is an important issue because the fee owner still reserves all the right to the land, and you can use the land without interfering with these new drainage structures that are going to be placed in the easement. So when we talk about uses that cannot conflict, we cannot impede the flow of water into those drainage structures. For instance, you can't place fencing around the drainage structures or landscaping around them that would impede the flow of water off of the property into the drainage structure. Examples of what you can do in the easement areas that's also important. You can continue to maintain and upkeep the lawns. You can drive over the inlets. You can park in the drainage inlets. So there are certain activities that you will still be able to do within the easement area. And what areas need the easements? As Greg discussed, they're at certain locations, but it's where the raised roadway is going to meet the existing ground elevation to capture and manage that runoff that was coming from the property onto the road that's not going to be able to flow that way anymore. So that's why we need the easements in the areas that we need them.
All right, now I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the details of the easements that Erin discussed. I'm going back to this project location map. What you see here, the areas highlighted in blue and in red are the two different types of easements that we will be needing. The areas shown in blue are where we're going to be needing what it's called an isolated drainage easements. Those are the easements that Erin discussed that are going to be either 5x5 or 5x10. The area in red, which is Valencia, north of Mahogany, is where we're going to be needing that 12-foot linear easement. I'm going to be going over in the next slides on how the size and the type of each easement was determined. The drainage easement, the 5x5 and the 5x10. The roads, where the roads are too narrow to harmonize or to connect to existing road, we will need to be placing those stormwater inlets adjacent to the property lines. The roads where we're going to be having this type of inlets are those connecting to Valencia Road, Blue Heron Lane, Egret Lane, Spoonbill Lane, Cardinal Lane, and Mahogany Drive east of La Paloma. There's, as we mentioned, there's two different sizes of those. While the inlet is still the same size, the difference between the 5x5 and the 5x10. First, let's start with the 5x5. The 5x5 is in areas where the elevation difference between existing and proposed is less than 6 inches. So as we harmonize or reconnect, tying to the existing road, that slope that you see there as a 1 to 4 is 1 foot in elevation for 4 feet horizontally. We need to meet those slopes because there's already criteria for that. So as we connect to existing, the inlet is going to be placed at that location where the tying or the connection point meets the existing road. The second type of easement that you're going to see, it's the inlet, like I said, is still the same size, but the reason why we will need a 5x10 is because this elevation difference on this specific locations are greater than 6 inches. So as we're higher and we connect with that slope that I already said was required, the offset of that inlet to the property line is going to be further back than it was on the 5x5. And this is a good illustration of the two different type of easements. The one on the left is 5x5. It will be placed at the property line. And the one on the left is 5x10, the same inlet, but further back. There is a picture of what the inlet will look like, and that's on the top right of your screen. You can see it. The only difference that you will see from this to what is going to be installed in your properties is that the inlet is not going to be right on the edge of the pavement. It's going to be at the property line, which is further back. Now I'm going to go over the details of the 12-foot easement. Because, as I said, Valencia has very limited right-of-way, and we need to provide lane widths 9 feet that meet the criteria. We're going to need to widen the road and provide a swell or a channel area that will collect the water and direct it to the inlets that will also be placed at the bottom of this swell. This will only happen on Valencia Road, and as you see here, there's some utilities that will also need to be relocated. This is the area that the second type of easement that we have. I've already gone over this typical section. There's a 15 to 20 space that we have available. We're going to be placing a swell. It's going to be sloped at a 1 to 4 again on that front side. And because the road is going to be higher, you're going to see an elevation difference of about 2 feet based on that new elevated road. But the elevation difference on the back or on the side that is closer to your property is only going to be about 6 to 9 inches deep. The inlets are going to be placed on either side of the driveways. We're going to still maintain a smooth transition to the driveway. And on the next section, we have both. We have on the right, we have a graphic of what this will look like. This is a little exaggerated because it's really just an engineering drawing, but you'll see here that the driveway still provides a smooth connection, and the inlets are going to be placed on either side along that swell that is going to be at a 1 to 4. On the bottom of that swell, the width is going to be 2 feet. The picture on the left is more a real-life example of how things will look like in your community. You see here the inlet, and you see how the driveways are on both sides of that drainage inlet. The utility relocations that I previously mentioned was, you can see here, Valencia, there's some utility poles and some utilities that are right next to the existing road. As we widen the road to provide the 9-foot lanes, those utilities are gonna have to shift back. There's no intent on adding new utilities or shifting this horizontally. Are going to remain at the same place. They're just going to shift back. On average, there's between 2 to 5 feet that they need to shift back. It depends on how wide the road is, because there's areas that we have 20 foot, and as we get narrower, we're going to have to shift them back a little more. This is plan view. This plan view will show you where the existing utilities are with the widened road. The utilities would fall in the middle of the pavement, and that's why we need to relocate them back. They will be placed along the 12-foot easement, but we're not going to be placing them right next to your properties. We're only going to be shifting them back, like I said, 2 to 5 feet. Now I'm going to hand it over to Rhonda, who's going to talk to you about what's next.
Thank you, Juliana. So you've heard a lot tonight, a lot of information, a lot of specific information about the easements. And so we kind of wanted to give you a wrap up here before we get into the question and answer period, how this process is going to work. So we sent the easements to you in the mail and by letter. And so we're asking for those to be re-signed and returned by May 1st. So they will not be recorded formally. They will only be held by the county. And then when we have those easements, we have enough of them to proceed, then Judy will go ahead and wrap up the 100% design plans and permit applications and submit those permit applications to the regulatory agencies, the Water Management District, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So those are the regulatory agencies. So while they're reviewing the permit applications and the design plans, we are also going to submit the same set of plans to our granting agencies, the ones that are providing the grant funds, and that's the Florida Department of Emergency Management at the state and federal FEMA And what they do then is they work together amongst themselves and conduct what's known as a benefit cost analysis. So they look at all the different benefits that this project provides, and then measure it against the cost. And that's something that can take several weeks or even several months. So there'll be a period of time here once we submit these plans, especially for the cost benefit analysis, that there won't be a lot of activity. We might be answering some internal questions back and forth with them, but there won't be a lot of external activity. And then if they do go ahead and approve the benefit cost analysis and say, okay, you're good to go, Monroe, that's when we're allowed to spend that $51.5 million in grant funds. So right now, those grant funds are on reserve for us to use, but we can't dip into them until they say you're good to go and that our benefit cost analysis is positive. If they happen to come back and say, I'm sorry, but your benefit cost analysis came in below the threshold, then at that point, we would stop the project and we wouldn't be able to move forward because we would lose those federal grant funds. So we're hoping that that doesn't happen, and we're going to be working very closely to answer all those questions in the hopes that we get a positive outcome for that. And then if we do get that positive outcome from FEMA, then we would go ahead and advertise for the construction bids, get those bids in. And at that point, we kind of stop everything. We kind of reach back out to you. Doesn't mean we won't be reaching out to you in the meantime, but we would hold another meeting, let you know what the actual bid price would be, because now we're going to have bids in our hands. Review that all with you, and we would know what the capital costs are going to be. We already know what the assessment costs are going to be. And then we would meet with you and go through that formal voting process. I don't know if any of you heard me talking in front of the commission the last several months, but we do have a new ordinance, the Residential Neighborhood Improvements Ordinance, that we anticipate will be approved at the May Commission meeting, June at the latest, and that's where that whole process comes into effect about how we go forward with that vote. So everybody on the line tonight, you're going to be allowed to vote. And even just because if you do provide us your easement document, doesn't mean you have to vote yes later on. You can still vote no if you want. You can vote whatever way you want. Tonight, we're just asking for those easements so we can at least submit these design plans to the regulatory agencies and to our granting agencies, so we can get forward to that next step where we can actually go out for bid. Like again, that's the point where we're going to stop. Now, if the residents, when we get to that point, if you vote yes, then the county would go ahead and hire the vendor and complete the work and spend our own money. Then we would come back to you later with the assessment. And tonight's meeting isn't about assessments. I know there might be some people new on here, but it's really about the easements. And then if the residents vote no at that point, then the project again would stop. We would return that $51.5 million in grant funds, because we're not allowed to keep those grant funds. That's why we're trying to get this project done on time, because that grant has schedules that Judy has to meet, and we're trying to stick to it. And Judy, did you have anything you wanted to come in here and add?
I have nothing to add. Christine, our county administrator, do you want to say some words and wrap it up before we take questions?
Sure.
I'd love to. First of all, I just want to say that this is a huge project for Monroe County. And I don't know if you've been following what has been talked about in the various news outlets, but we have many neighborhoods that are experiencing flooding like you are. And we just have literally less than a handful of projects that we have been able to secure this kind of grant money for. So I really want to emphasize how important this opportunity is. If we do not make it through the design and the easements and grant cost benefit analysis, then that opportunity is going to be lost. And what we see on the ground in many of the neighborhoods is that the sunny day flooding that you do experience continues to get worse. So we're very focused on coming up with incredibly inventive solutions for our neighborhoods with the participation of the people that own property there. So I want to really call out the fact that Rhonda emphasized you will be voting on this. Our board has made it very clear that they want over 50% of the property owners to be in favor of the project, because they don't want to force people into something that they really don't want to do. What's really key to this, though, is when you're a property owner and you've made an investment and it starts flooding and there are, news articles about that, it can often diminish your real estate value. And this project would be literally a solution based on our current estimates for 25 years and beyond. And that means if your neighborhood moves forward with this, you would really have a protected area. And I think that's going to be really important for all of our neighborhoods in the Keys. $51 million in grant money is unheard of these days. State and federal governments have been tightening their belts. So we really, really want to pursue this and make it a nice project for all of you. I do hope that you'll emphasize and really prioritize turning those easements in. And I'll say it again, Rhonda said it, but just because you turn an easement in does not mean it's going to be recorded or that the project is going to move forward. But without getting the easements, we can't move forward with the granting agencies and with the final design. So this is an incredible point in this project that has to be, seriously considered by all of you. And we really hope that you are going to participate. I would say also that if you have a question about the easements, Judy and Rhonda are always available. And if it ends up being a legal question, they have people that can help with those types of questions as well. And then finally, I think, oops, hold on. I think that your neighborhood is actually one of the few that we're going to get done probably in the next 5 to 10 years. So I know it's a little bit scary. It's a really large project, but I do think it would protect your property values and your long-term ability to stay where you love living. And we all love the Florida Keys, and I appreciate all of you attending. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Christine. All right, I think we're ready to move forward with questions. Jathan,
Thank you.
give us our
We're going to start with taking questions from the public, but first we want to start with the easement question. So if you have questions regarding the easement, please use the raised hand feature. Once again, we're going to start taking questions regarding easements. All right, I have two raised hands. The first one is Luis Soto.
Yeah,
Luis.
Luis is with WSP, so you can just promote him as a panelist. Sorry.
All right, then we have Luis and Norca. Please unmute. Luis and Norca, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm Luis Rodriguez. My wife is Norca. Our property is on Blue Heron Lane. It's lot 2, block 5 there. And I have gone through the whole thing that you sent me here. And there are some things here that I am having some difficulties with, and maybe you can explain them to me. The drainage easement and stormwater inlets paper that you send refers to, it says historically storm water from some private properties flowed naturally into the roadway. Now, for all the years that I have been there, I have never had any problems with storm water. The problem is king tides. The problem is when the tides get so high that water from the canal rises and it floods part of the property. It's not a big deal. The biggest thing is when it floods Valencia Road, and then you cannot drive there without going through salt water. So I don't think that actually the problem is not storm water, but tide water coming from the canal. And then if that's what you're going to be putting into the inlets, what is the end of it? Because, I mean, you're going to be pumping out Largo Sound and the Atlantic Ocean and everything else. How the heck can that be? That there be no end to it? It's not just a certain amount of rainwater that collected there. It's water that when the tide comes up, then you're just going to be pulling it into the inlet, and there will be no end to it. That part I don't quite understand. Okay, how you could do that, and then there's another question that I have. Um, After this is completed, and we have all the pumps and everything else that you do. Isn't there going to be a tax issue there at the end of the year? Are they going? Because that I mean, obviously, the county or somebody is going to want to get some additional tax money for maintenance, because this system will have maintenance. Obviously, for keeping it clean and keeping the pumps running and everything else. Has anybody calculated what the impact is going to be on taxes at the end of the year for having this system working? I have a little bit of a difficulty with that. Particularly what I mentioned at the beginning, that it's not really storm water, but it's tide water. Actually, storm water from heavy rains will actually flow into the canal and go away. So storm water is not a problem. It can rain all day long, all week long, and it'll all go to the canal. It's when it's coming from the canal, coming up, and reaching the property. And by the way, my property gets flooded, not so much as to reach the street, but yes, it's a little annoying. But yeah, it gets water there from the king tides and everything else. And then after a while, it goes away, and we go back to life. There's not a major problem. A long time ago, and I have lived there for a long time, Valencia Road used to belong to us. It was our, and then after going through a lot of things with the state, because the state wanted to take over everything. Finally, they turned it over to us, and then we turned it over to the county, with the understanding that the road was going to be raised so that we wouldn't be driving through salt water and everything else, and then what would that do? That would raise the road, and we could drive through there on a dry road, and then. But you seem to be concerned about the fact, I don't know that it's even a fact, that water from the flooded lots could not get over the road like it is doing now. I don't think it is doing it now. At least where I am, the water, when it comes to king tides, it just stays in my property, and it never goes over the road. It goes over Valencia Road. Yes, there it does, because it's very low. And we thought that was part of the deal, that the road was going to be raised. And I thought that raising the roads would just take care of all the problems. But
if I could,
that way. But could you explain to me whether there's going to be a charge from the county because for maintenance of the pipelines and the injection holes and the pumping and everything else? Has anybody calculated what that's going to be?
Yes, I'll start with your first question, the issue of the stormwater versus the saltwater.
Can somebody answer that? Do I need to do anything here to close my? You
can go on mute, or I will, and I'll respond to your question. And Greg, please feel free to jump in. As Juliana mentioned, the solution to the sea level rise and the salt water on the roads is twofold. First, with the low-lying roads, the solution is to raise the road. That's the solution to the king tides that are now coming up higher than they used to due to sea level rise. So the first part of the project is raising the roads, as we had shown. When we do that, we are required by state regulations to manage the stormwater on those roads. So that's part of the solution. We cannot do one without the other, which is why we've talked about stormwater. In addition to that, traditionally in your neighborhood and in the county, the way stormwater has been addressed is really it sits and then it infiltrates into the ground, by gravity infiltration. As the groundwater and sea level comes up, we lose that ability to drain by gravity. Obviously, when the king tides come in, there is no ability to drain that way. So that is, those are the premises by which we've designed this project. Now, our county codes and our state regulations say that normally stormwater that is on private property must be managed on that private property. But we know through the design along some of these roads, some amount of that water from stormwater from private property has drained onto the roadway, which has historically been the low point. Even though it's supposed to be managed on private property, it's flowing to the road. Historically, it's done that. So now, as we address the stormwater and raise the roads, we need to still manage that stormwater. That's why these certain inlets need to be outside of the raised roadway to collect any of that water off of the private property that has historically drained to the roadway. We understand that your problem is the salt water and the inundation of the roads. But in solving that problem with an elevated road, we can't ignore the stormwater. Greg, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
No, I think you addressed it pretty well, Judy.
Okay. All right. And then to address your second question, yes, there will be an operations and maintenance assessment that each of the residents in the project area will need to pay. We did cover that at the February 10th meeting, and I apologize. We tried to streamline this to mainly address issues with the easements. The estimate that we came up with the O&M assessment, and right now it's just an estimate because it is based off of the cost of the project. What the O&M assessment will cover is, as you said, the operations and maintenance of the pump station, the mechanical equipment, the electrical components. It will also pay for the eventual replacement of some of that equipment. So it is somewhat based off of the ultimate price of the project. Right now, the estimate based on our construction estimate is about $156 per month for each parcel. That is just an estimate. But you are absolutely correct. There is ongoing costs associated with a system like that. And those costs will be borne by the beneficiaries of this, the system. That is why, because there is a cost, as our county administrators and Rhonda stated, the residents will get to vote on whether they want the project to proceed. That was something our Board of County Commissioners said these costs need to be borne by the people who will be benefiting from the project. And because of that, they get to decide if the project moves forward. So that is something that we will, as we move closer to construction, we get a better idea of the costs. We will be providing those, and then you will be voting on just that issue. So I hope that addresses those questions.
Judy, I think that he also asked what the Twin Lakes one was. If he hasn't, it's in the chat. So the $156 a month is $1,872 a year. So that's less than what Twin Lakes is paying. They're paying $2,131 a year. So Twin Lakes is paying more.
Yeah. All right, next question.
Judy, I was just going to add while you're bringing up another question. I think he mentioned, and I think a lot of folks have mentioned this before, about hey, you can't pump the ocean, right? And we all understand that, right? We're not sitting around here thinking that we're going to pump the
Mhm.
so currently the level of service that you guys have is that the king tides get on the properties and then doesn't go away. Well, this pump station system is designed that those inlets will now capture that king tide after it goes down and then drain the water a lot quicker off of your community so that it will alleviate those impacts moving forward. So I just wanted people to realize that the pump station is not just only for stormwater, it also will
Right.
be mitigating some of those king tides.
All right. The next user who has a hand raised is Zoltan's iPhone. I also want to indicate if you're calling in via telephone, please dial *9 to use the raise hand. Once again, if you're calling in via telephone, dial *9. Zoltan's iPhone, you've been unmuted.
Hello, yes. Forgive me. I have a number of questions. For one, I second, I believe his name was Lewis, who asked the first question earlier about, what kind of fees were going to be assessed. I asked that in the chat as well. It sounds like 1,800 and what'd you say, 56 odd dollars. That's a substantial increase from what we're paying now, per parcel. I know how I feel about that. I'm sure I can gather how everyone else is going to feel about that. Also, what, and I mean, is there a ceiling on that cost? Is it going to be continually reassessed? This sounds to me like an excuse to spend crazy amounts of money and not really have an end game to it. How high are you going to raise this? And then have there been studies done to see how much of this is tidal? This two-pronged solution, as you say, is tidal flow versus storm runoff. Again, I bicycle through this neighborhood here in Pamela Village off Valencia. I know exactly that area that he's talking about. Will there be what's the ceiling to this assessment? Is this like 1,856? That's next year. Okay. The year after that, is this going to turn into like a monster HOA where we're each paying another mortgage? For this thing at some point, this just becomes a runaway gun, so to speak. And then, in addition to those, that sort of tertiary question there, what about how much property from the county right away are you going to take? How much property are you going to take from me via, eminent domain or whatever it is that you do? And then how is this going to practically impact our parcel? Is there going to be a sidewalk? Is this going to be another, sidewalks and liability nightmare? I've lived here for quite some time. One of the beautiful things about living here is that we don't have the kind of nightmarish scenario where because someone trips over a rock, that's in the county right away, they can walk up and sue me. I mean, I'm sure in this day and age you can find a reason, but it's not so explicit like the sidewalks in New York, where if you don't shovel a public sidewalk in front of your house, and someone slips on it, you get sued. Is this going to be like that? And then, and then on top of that, are you going to change a lot of other things? And what fees, in addition to this upkeep cost that you mentioned earlier, this $1,856, 50 something dollars a year, what additional fees are we going to be charged just to implement the construction, just to have this? So I think that's about that.
All right. So I'm going to jump in here, then we'll probably have somebody else come in to help me. First of all, did you get a letter in the mail that we needed an easement on your property?
I'm sorry, I'm going to bring it back. I thought you were done asking this question. I removed this permission to speak.
That's okay. I'm going to go ahead. It's all right. It's okay. I can go ahead. So if he didn't get a letter, we don't need any use of his property. So his property will stay as is. The only people that we need use from on their property are the, what is it, like 27 people that we sent the letters to that we need easements on their property. And that's only to put in that inlet structure that we showed you a picture of and or the swale. And that goes in either the 5 feet or the 10 feet that we talked about early in the program. So that's all that's going to be. You can continue, as Aaron had said earlier, to use that. You can drive over it or park on it, either in the swale or in that inlet structure, that concrete thing with the grate in it. That's what's the inlet structure is. So you can continue to drive over it or park on it. The only thing you can't do is like can't put a fence across the top of it or put a building on top because we need to be able to get in there every once in a while just to maintain it. That's what part of that assessment is. So that, I think that hopefully that answers the questions about the property. So the only pieces of property we're looking at using, not buying. We're not going to do eminent domain. That's not a part of this project. We're not going to take it away. That's why we're having this meeting tonight to explain what these easements are about, that you can still use your property and that. Then you had the questions about the assessment dollars. So that $156 a month that we referenced just a bit earlier, that's the estimate. And that's for the monthly cost for the operations and maintenance of the system, like you had described, to pay for the operations and maintenance, the power, the people to come in and maintain it. And then there's also a fee in there to replace that pump when it's needed much into the future. So this money does not go to the county, does not go in the county general fund. It goes into your fund for this project. And then it just accumulates year to year, and we use that to pay the fees as they come across. Now, what we like to do when we set these up, because we don't want to change these numbers every year. So what we try to do is we anticipate what the amount is going to be for the next 5 years on an annual basis. Then we add that up and divide by 5. And so we like to see that your assessment is going to be equal level for at least 5 years. Now, that said, because this is a new type of project, we don't have a lot of cost experience with these because we don't have a lot of these in the county. We don't have any like this. So we would evaluate how these expenses are being spent. And if it turns out that we don't need as much as we're taking, then we can reduce the assessment. Alternatively, if we need a little more, then we can come back. But I want to let you know, every year we have to go in front of the public and the commission to renew these assessments, so you'll get the opportunity to comment at that time. And also at any time during the year, you can go ahead and write to the county or send an email or put a request in to see how that money is being spent. Again, this is your money, not the county money. It just goes towards the expenses of the project and maintaining it. And also we have to hire that official person that runs the tax rolls and everything. We're called our assessment consultant. And that's an extra little fee there that she has to do because she has to run the tax roll every year to see if any properties have been sold. So that's also included in it. Now, my salary is not included, neither is anybody else's from the county. That's part of the services that the county provides. So that's how the assessment works. There might be, so that's the assessment for an operations and maintenance. What we had talked about in the other meeting, the first meeting, there might be a second assessment. We hope not. That would be for the capital costs. As we said, we have, I forgot how much money we have in grant funds. Was it 51.4 million? Available in federal grant funds. That's very near the cost estimate of the project to build it. So what we're hoping is, and we're doing everything we can to get this designed to be a really tight set of plans so that's as cost effective as possible. So when we bid that out, that we're hoping the bids will come in. We're not hoping, but we're doing everything we can to ensure to try to get those bids as close to the amount of grant funds that we have. Now, if they come in under the amount of grant funds, that's hallelujah. That means they don't have to have any second assessment for capital funds. If it comes in over, whether it's $1 over whatever, then that would need, that's where the county commissions had said that we'd be looking to the residents to fund that. Now, before you get all excited, that's why we need to go out for bids and see what these actual costs are going to be, because those actual costs, like if it's going to come in at what we hope is, or maybe a little less, that would also affect the operations and maintenance, because that means we don't maybe have to build in quite the level of high costs that we have now. So that's why we only say we only have an estimate right now. So you're going to get to vote. You're going to get to vote. You're going to get to vote. Everybody in the county, in the benefit area will get to vote by formal methods and means, and that's after our ordinance goes into effect, which I think is probably going to be at the May board. We haven't worked that procedure out yet. We're in the middle of that, but what we're anticipating is everybody's going to get a formal letter in the mail to vote. They're going to, if one property gets one letter, and you'll sign it and send it back or bring it in or whatever you have, and then 50% of the people that are in the project area who are in the benefiting area, 50% plus one person has to vote in favor of this project. And that's how we would say it's a yes vote. And so we're going to work very hard to get ensuring that everyone votes. So we don't count the number based on the number of responses. We count the number based on the actual number of property owners. So if even 50% don't even respond, and then that's, automatically going to fail because we need 50% plus one of the total population vote to vote yes. And then I think you had a question about, and again, no eminent domain, this is all voluntary. And then I think you had a question about modeling the stormwater versus the tidal water, and I don't know if Greg or Juliana want to jump in about that. I'm not sure.
I didn't catch that question, Rhonda, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
I mean, I can explain the modeling process if you'd like, but I don't remember a specific question.
All right, that's okay. He can come back on and raise his hand.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I hope that wasn't too long of an answer. Next question.
All right, next raised hand is Kelly Steinmetz. Kelly, please unmute your microphone. Kelly Steinmetz, please unmute your microphone.
Can you hear us?
Say there.
Yes.
Okay, it's Kelly Steinmetz and Eric Steinmetz. This is Eric Steinmetz speaking. Being born and raised in Monroe County, okay, I was born in Marathon, Florida, and I've spent 59 years there, okay, and I own a home on Valencia Road. I am very, very concerned about this. My family has owned a construction company in Monroe County since 1956, okay? I have a whole lot of knowledge about seawater rise and storm runoff, and I must agree with Lewis 100%, the first speaker, that you're not going to be able to drain the Atlantic Ocean, okay? So the first question I have is, when we do get the king tides, are those pumps going to run continuously while we have those king tides? Okay. The other question I would like to answer is, who specifically, name-wise, initiated this project? The next question I would like to know, will this take my home out of the flood zone? Will I no longer have to pay flood insurance? The other thing, when the storm, not the storm runoff, but the king tides come up, okay, as we know, the county raised Valencia Road many years ago, and the road stays dry, but the king tides come in and flood the properties. And unless you build a seawall all the way around those properties from Valencia Road over to La Paloma, 6-7 feet tall, you're going to slow down the water coming in. But the islands are made out of cap rock, which is porous rock, and the water is going to come up through the cap rock. And the next question is, one of the ladies talked about widening the road, Valencia Road, okay? On one side of the road is obviously John Pennekamp State Park, and their fence runs right along the road. And my property line runs within 18 inches to 20 inches from the edge of the pavement. Where are you going to get that property without coming onto my property to widen that road?
Okay, Greg, do you want to start with speaking about the system and the running the pumps and how that operates?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned when I responded to Lewis's question, no, the pumps are not going to pump the ocean, right? So as the king tides come up, the pumps are designed with certain flow levels, basically alarms within the wet well themselves. And so as the wet well fills up, the water comes in, the pump will turn on, and then after it gets to a certain threshold, the pump will turn off, especially when you have those higher extended time periods of king tides. As that king tide then recedes, the pump will turn back on and start to drain the property within the community so as to providing that level of service so you do not have that king tide sitting on your property for an extended period of time. And as Judy had mentioned, it's a twofold system. So you're raising the roadways. So that's going to alleviate some of the access ability. So you're going to be able to access your community now during those higher king tides situations. Whereas now the stormwater and the king tides are going to be able to be drained off of your property in a much faster time period after the king tides recede. So it's a twofold benefit with the overall community.
Okay, and then I think the next question was, who initiated this project? This project was identified in the county's 2-year roads vulnerability assessment, where we evaluated the impacts of sea level rise and king tides on all of our county maintained roads. That was a 2-year study. That's where we developed the target elevations. We looked at the existing water level, what the predictions on sea level rise, where that would take us a certain number of years out. And this was one of the projects. They were the projects that were identified were ranked when we would see the vulnerabilities. Obviously, lower roads were ranked. We would see impacts sooner than roads that are higher elevation. And then with the availability of the grant funds, projects were selected to proceed. I don't have a specific name for you. That was done by the county team, including the county administrator then and the people on this meeting. As we said, there's only a few for which we have grant funds. And this was one of the ones that we selected. This project is not going to address flood insurance that you're required to have for your property. This is adapting the roads so that we can maintain access to your homes. It has nothing to do with the flood insurance that you are required to purchase for your home and your property. That's a different issue. And then the widening of the road in that area, we have, as Juliana had said, 15 to 20 feet. And some of that is taken up right now. I think the asphalt is about 12 feet wide. We are going to need some additional space. The right of way that we have will just fit the wider asphalt. And that's why we need the easement to address the stormwater. I can't speak to the fence. I know there is a fence along the opposite side of the roadway. I don't know that that's on the property of Pennycamp or within the right of way. But with our survey and the plans that Juliana had shown an example of, that's how it's going to fit along Valencia. But we do need the easements. I think I addressed all the questions. So, Jathan, are there any more raised hands?
Yes, there are. There are 6 raised hands. The next speaker is Bobby Hanson. Bobby Hanson, please unmute your microphone.
I'm unmuted. Audio check.
You can hear you.
Great. Consistent with the other speakers, the whole thing about the king tides is the big concern for most people. I think everyone would most likely agree that we love the idea of raising the roads. To the point that's been made several times is we raise the roads, the follow-on, the state requires us to also handle that stormwater. So I guess that my question would be, the first thing my wife said is, well, why don't we slope the roads to the center and capture that water and eliminate any adverse effect to the homeowners without even going there, right? Because you guys are the engineers, y'all hired consultants to do all this. Could we go to the state for a simple waiver to say, hey, the people that are shown in this map that you're showing right now approve of raising the roads without having to do all of this stuff for stormwater, which we don't even care about?
No, that has been discussed. As I mentioned, we've done a 2-year vulnerability study. Part of that was also looking at the regulations and getting a waiver from South Florida Water Management District isn't an option. They have recently, in the last year or so, actually tightened up their regulations and made them more stringent. So that isn't something that we could pursue.
Okay.
All right. Next question.
Next speaker is Kayla S. Kayla S., please unmute your microphone. Kayla, you're unmuted. Sound check. We'll return to Kayla. It looks like she's having a technical issue on her end. Next speaker is Nikki. Nikki, please unmute your microphone.
Hello, sir. Do you hear me? This is Matthew, actually, Nikki's husband.
So we hear you, Matthew. Good evening.
Yes. My question is twofold. I see that I'm a property owner on Mahogany. So as I've been explained, the road is not being raised in my property. They're just building the stormwater system and placing the pipe in the gutter in front of my property. So it seems to me that I'm getting all of the expense, but none of the benefit of this road raising project. And looking at these plans, I see things like Gibraltar Road slopes downward, and nobody on Gibraltar is part of this project. And likewise with La Paloma on the other side of Mahogany. So how is the project being designed to prevent homeowners on Gibraltar from benefiting from the stormwater runoff that's going to run into, let's say, our system without having to pay for it? And same question for the people that live on La Paloma. And how is it determined who has to pay for this and is in this municipal benefit unit for the design project? Because it seems to me that there's really no rhyme or reason for why my property was included in this, other than the county needs to run the stormwater pipe down Mahogany. And so therefore, I live on Mahogany, and surprise, I'm now included in the project, and they're not raising the road.
Okay. We are not raising sections of Mahogany. We are installing the stormwater management system. So there is a benefit that you will receive. The project limits were developed, as I said, during the roads vulnerability study. We looked at different roads and grouped them into the different project areas. So that was how that was developed. It was somewhat dependent on elevations. Above a certain elevation, we can still install gravity drainage. There is a section of La Paloma north of Mahogany that is included in the project. So it's not highlighted on this exhibit because there aren't easements needed there, but it is included.
Right, but how are you preventing the people bordering that with the from preventing their stormwater from running into the project? And likewise, Gibraltar, that is not included. How is the county going to prevent the stormwater from Gibraltar for the people that pay zero to put their water into our stormwater project? What is the county doing to prevent that?
That will be addressed along Gibraltar separately from this project.
Well, it seems like it should be addressed with this project since you're going to be charging us. So why are we paying for it and everybody else benefiting?
Like I said, you're within the project limit. You will be receiving the benefit of the stormwater management system on your roadway. And that's how we felt it.
There's no standing water on my roadway, so I don't really see the benefit. I understand you said ingress and egress will be easier, but my portion of Mahogany never has any water on it. So I'm really having problems understanding this.
Understood. You're within the project.
And it's been answered.
Next speaker, let's try Kayla S. again. Kayla S., please unmute your microphone.
Hello, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
So this is Omar Saavedra, Kayla's husband, and I'm on the same issue as Matt is, and I could second that. We have no reason to be part of this assessment. You're mentioning as well, like Matt said again, that we're getting a storm drain system, that we're benefiting from the storm drain. We have no issues with stormwater runoff in our neighborhood. I mean, east, sorry, in our block, which is basically the road that is west of La Paloma, we have no problem of storm drains in all of that block, from that stop sign from Tamarind to La Paloma. There is no issues whatsoever of storm drain issues. So again, I second that we shouldn't even be part of this scope of work and getting assessed for it when there's no benefits to us. And then my other issue is, when is this vote gonna take place? How are we gonna be notified for it? And what if 50% of the residents do not attend the vote at all? How would the project proceed?
I can jump in on that last question, and Judy, maybe you can come in on the rest. So on the vote process, that's why we're trying to collect all of your contact information this evening. So we have email addresses for you. But we will be sending a letter to the address on file with the property appraiser's office, and also to the local address. So every person in the benefit area that you see in that map there, not just the people with easements, but everyone in the benefit area that would ultimately have to pay an assessment, will receive a letter for the vote. And that would be conducted after we have gone out for bids, if we get to that point where we've gone out for bids and gotten the bids back and looked at them. And then we have an estimate, and then we're going to know exactly how much the project is going to cost, and if the amount of grant funds will cover at least the capital costs. And we'll also then can lock in that dollar amount for the operations and maintenance assessment. Now, we're not going to just dump you between now and then. So that's like you're not going to hear from us. We can certainly have more meetings in between to help bring other residents, up to speed with the same level of knowledge. I know we have a lot of new people tonight, and that you haven't heard any of this before. So I certainly understand your questions and your concerns, and we can have more meetings. It can have them at the county center over there at the Murray Nelson Center if you like, and move forward with that. We want to make sure that we have a very engaged neighborhood. Now, if 50% of the population doesn't vote, then that's going to automatically stop the project, because we need 50% plus one people to vote yes.
As far as being notified, you mentioned being notified.
Yep.
We were barely notified on this meeting. I just want to bring that to light as well.
You were what?
We were not notified on this meeting. The reason we found out about it is actually a homeowner here
Right.
put a paper in our mailbox. So I just want to bring that to light as well.
Correct. Sure.
As I could guarantee you, 90% of the homeowners here are not aware of this.
Right. So the people that we really were focused on this evening were the people that we sent the letters to. I forget how many there were, like 27 of them, I think. We didn't send them to everybody in the project area because we wanted to focus very specifically on the people who we need an easement from. We wanted to be able to bring up maps and look at people's individual houses if necessary, and answer their very individual questions regarding the easements. We're happy to answer all the rest of the questions, but there will be more meetings where everybody is invited, where we can answer the more general questions, like about the assessments and all of that. So you'll be hearing from us again. But that's why you didn't get the invitation.
Sorry to cut you off there. I have one last question, and it's more of a safety question. because I do have a 6-month-old and a 3-year-old toddler. And I understand I'm in construction as well. I understand that there's health risk when throwing asphalt and breathing the asphalt in as well. Have those been addressed?
I'm not sure I understand the question. I mean, when we pave the roads, I mean, that's a standard process. We're outside.
I understand, but there's implications of health risk when throwing asphalt. There's chemicals involved. As always, there's a lot of kids in this neighborhood.
Right.
It's
Well, when we pave,
a
we
health
would,
risk at the same time, and I know that hasn't been mentioned in any of the meetings. So I just want to bring that to light as well.
right. In general, you know, when the county undertakes a number of construction projects and we do follow standard health and safety and maintenance of traffic and that sort of thing. So we do run safe projects.
Next speaker is Kelly. Excuse me, Carrie. Carrie, please unmute your microphone.
Oh, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. First of all, I just want to give all due respect. I know you guys feel like a dartboard right now, and we know you're trying to do something that benefits everyone. But thank God we have America and we can speak, because I think, like everyone else, we really don't want this project in our neighborhood. Would we like our roads raised? Yes, we're sinking. It really doesn't have a whole lot to do with stormwater. There's no stormwater. It's king tide. I live on Valencia, and you will take 12 feet of my property. I do not want my electric pole right outside of my porch. I do not want people driving in front of my house. So I will do whatever it takes to not let this project go through. So my questions are, when you did the study, where do we find the information for this study? And did you finish it? Go ahead. I'm not going to hit you all at once.
Yes, and we actually have a website where we have put a lot of the information.
Wonderful.
We can type it into the chat.
Great, please.
Okay.
And also, if my neighbors decide that they want to go through with it, and I don't want to take out my fence, my pavers, my landscaping, give up my property, what would I do then? I would have to get a litigation attorney for land authority. What would be my next move?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that question.
I'm saying if I'm the only one, let's just say majority votes yes, and it's the other side of the neighborhood, and I'm on Valencia, and I'm the one that's going to get it the most, like my other neighbors that live here. I understand we're on Half Street. We love our Half Street. We're respectful. We spill over. We don't want it widened. We just want it raised. Is there any way to raise it and do what you got to do and not widen it? I know you're going to say no. I know you have your plans and your engineers, but I just don't agree. Our king side comes in, it goes out. It's never stayed. We have about 6 weeks out of the year that we have water. Does it suck? Yeah. Now, is this going to be something once we vote no, that you guys can say, okay, they voted no, they can't sue us for their cars being damaged now? Is that what's really going on?
To address your first question, we cannot raise the roads without addressing the stormwater. It's not the county. It's not because we have a plan and we don't want to change our plan. It's the state regulations.
No,
So
I understand that. I understand that part.
So that isn't an option.
We don't have stormwater. I know that we copy and pasted this model from every neighborhood, but I'm thinking that we need to rethink on this neighborhood. We don't have stormwater problems. We have a sinking road problem. That's it. It's mortar. We got caprock with mortar. We're losing our top. I've been here 25 years. They have never paved this road ever. And it's got holes. It's not maintained. And when king tide comes in, ton of debris. When we got a nice big storm drainage out front here with a sway, add mosquitoes, add junk, add they can't keep up with it. You can't stuck a tomato through a straw. So basically, I'm just a little concerned. I appreciate your time. I don't want to be nasty. My vote is no, and I'd like to get that over with today. And I think everybody else would. So thank you for your work. Thank you for your time, and I will be fighting.
Thank you.
Next speaker is David Hartman. David Hartman, please unmute your microphone. David Hartman, you have your hand raised.
Jethan, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Hey, Jethan. Thank you for moderating this today. First off, I want to thank everyone involved in this project. The assessment is obviously a time and a lot of work went into it, and it's a big concern for all of us. It's a delicate issue on both sides, and I definitely understand, and I do hear Carrie's plight. I do want to say from my friend Nada Joe Jones on Mahogany, who couldn't be here tonight at a graduation, that they do support the injection well for what it's worth. I do want to reiterate a couple things about this project. I understand state regulations are involved, but that is not a fail-safe for the reality that we live in here. We are not Stillwright Point. We are not Twin Lakes. I am dead center, epicenter of the king tide. My road, I'm a property owner, 861 Cardinal Lane, used to be first lane. In Valencia, I'm right at the corner. I'm the lowest turn that has a house on it of the entire street. I know because I walk it a lot during king tides to get out of here, so I'm not taking my car out. My road floods first and drains last. I don't have a problem with residual water. I do not have a problem with residual water. Raising the roads will resolve a lot of little puddles that are left behind. And the Carrie's right. If the roads were done on a regular maintenance schedule, we wouldn't have half the king tide problems we have right now. So shame on the county for the lack of maintenance to a very affluent neighborhood, by the way. The taxpayers here are not happy with the conditions of the road. But I'll be very clear. There is zero stormwater or tidewater retention issues in this community. Please do not label us like your other neighborhoods. And please stop falling back on state regulations as an excuse. We appreciate raising the roads, but the pumping issue has to be rethought. It's a little too extensive in my mind, based on my knowledge of the neighborhood, being here 22 years. I understood there's got to be some there. I think the easement was well thought out as far as in my area. I get why Carrie's upset, but you guys got to rethink this in terms of what we actually experience. I have a ring camera. I can give you guys coverage every single day if you want of what actually happens here. I'm the epicenter of the lowest tide. I'm the lowest house in the neighborhood, and I have no problem 2 hours after tide. Minimal little puddles that would go away with a slight raising of the roads. But I do want to thank you guys for having these meetings. I do appreciate your time for doing all the work that went into this.
There are no more raised hands except for individuals who have spoken already.
Do we want to go through the list of questions in the chat?
We do have a new raised hand, Michael
Okay.
Stanley. Michael Stanley, please unmute your microphone.
Good evening. Want to thank you for having this meeting. I'm extremely disappointed that we were not notified of the February meeting, that only through community involvement here in our neighborhood and word of mouth that we even knew this existed tonight. So that being said, moving along to more important things. I'm the next door neighbor to the Steinmetzes who spoke earlier. I have been here 21 years, and I have mature landscaping. I have protected gumbo limbo trees along the road. Eric has a over 100-year-old Jamaican dogwood tree that's in your right-of-way that you're planning to cut down to make a swale and to basically widen the road, the same kind of scam you were running with trying to widen US 1 to Homestead. It's just another cloak and dagger for widening the road and controlling our properties without reimbursing us for the usage or loss of usage. You'll be cutting down protected landscaping on our two properties and a few going south that I know of. The neighbor next to Kerry Steinmetz, if you take 12 feet of his property and his property is sloped up to his home, if you cut that out for your land, for your swale, your ditch, whatever you want to call it, the man will not even have a place to put his cars on his own property. I think you need to get out of the office, get off the computer, get out here, walk this, and actually see what you're talking about. Bring your paint can, walk down the street, come in, you get kind of vague here and there on the 12 feet versus the 12 feet versus additional 12 to 5 and another 10. Some of that 10 is going to up underneath of somebody's house in some of these places. Most of the problem here is also caused by the park. And, I had a talk with a park biologist many years ago as they were complaining about, different trees that homeowners had that were not indigenous that were falling into their property and coming up there. Well, after talking to the park biologist, I pulled and I worked for the county appraiser's office for an amount of time in the early 2000s. And I have seen the original plat maps and drawings. The 1950s, the entire campground for Pennicamp was wetlands. The state came in and filled that in. That is not a homeowner's problem. That's the state is guilty for creating a runoff situation by filling in wetlands. The road should be banked, should be raised, but banked, sending that stormwater, your climate. We don't have stormwater. We have high king tide water. When that king tide water comes in from the park and from where the park has left it as wetlands, it should be simply banked to send the water back to where it came from. There's no need to be digging up this whole neighborhood, and we have to endure the same mess we had when we had the sewer plants put in, which is exactly what you're doing. And if you're going to be cutting all those lines, pipes in there, that means my new electric line underground from the opposite side of the street to my house, I will lose electric for I don't know how much time while you do this. I will lose my sewer lines while you're doing this. My water lines will have to be cut and reconnected. And if anybody that was here long enough back remembers the sewer project and how much fun that created here with us not having access to our properties and having to park and walk in, I don't think any of us want to relive any of that. So I don't see, sitting in front of a computer in Key West, that's a groovy thing. Come out here, take a real look, bring your paint gun, and see what destruction you're going to do to our neighborhood. And, as Eric said, the state has their fence right on the road. There's nothing there but some shrubs, some non-native plants on their side of the fence as well. I don't see where the right-of-way shouldn't be on that side, as they are the cause of this problem. And you're transferring the cause of the problem to someone other than the person causing it.
All right, we do have one more. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, are there any more raised hands?
Yes, there are.
Okay.
We have one more new raised hand, and I also want to restate, if you are calling in via telephone, to dial *9 on your keypad to activate the raised hand feature. Up next, we have John Sprang. John Sprang, please unmute your microphone.
Hello. Hey, I'm at 983 Valencia. I'm one of the easement people. At the last meeting I was there, I just wanted to confirm with everybody, the folks at HDR said with the 12-foot easement, are the average the average amount of land that would have to go to actually paving the road would only be around 2 feet, is what I was told. I just wanted, if you could verify that. All the rest, our front yards are pea gravel and that kind of stuff. So I can see that, being put back over the piping. But I was just wondering if that's pretty much what it is, right around 2 feet of asphalt that would widen the road. That's it.
Juliana, you're muted?
I'm sorry. Yes, so it's an average of 2 feet. The existing road varies significantly. So we could see between 2 to 4 feet of additional pavement. But for the most part, it's 2 feet. It's just that the existing width is not standard. Sometimes it's 12 feet, sometimes it goes to 14 feet, but we need to provide at least 9-foot lanes. So we need to provide 18 foot of pavement to allow for two-way traffic.
Okay, that answers it. Thanks. I just thought it was around 2 feet, 4 feet. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
We have 2 more raised hands, but they are previous speakers.
Okay. If they have more questions, we can address them. So.
All right. First one is Zoltan's iPhone. Please unmute.
Yeah, hello again. I think, again, I think a number of my fellow community members here in Pamela Village have already said, thank you. I understand that you guys put some work into this. So pleasantries aside, though, this sounds to me like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, like all of Pamela Village, or at least the majority of it, I live on Lignum Vitae, are going to be paying for this. And in my case, we would receive no benefit. I can't also state strongly enough that if you were going to do something, even though I don't live where a number of our other questioners had mentioned they live, that the raised road by itself might be a much better solution. And as another one of my fellow community members mentioned, that the state regulations or state laws are not the ultimate backstop. We live in America, so we can get those changed, right? I mean, there's got to be some rhyme or reason. I can't stress that enough, that, again, there's county property or state property on the other side of this, the other side of, Valencia there. How come that's not up for grabs? That seems like that would offer a lot of comfort to the people who would be the beneficiaries of this project. If you needed an easement, take it from the state. Don't take it from us. We pay for this, so that's one kind of conglomerate question. The other thing is, I'm not much a fan of how the primary focus of this meeting was the 27 people, I believe that was the figure you mentioned, who were going to benefit from this, the people who were targeted with the easement, but the rest of us who are going to have to pay for this, because it seems to me, again, like all of Pamela Village here is going to have to suffer through paying this again and again and again, year after year. I would throw in things like the raise for the person who's going to be the auditor, so many other maintenance creep and scope creep questions, but why weren't we included? Why weren't we also the focus? If we're being taxed for this, because let's face it, that's what this is. This is going to be a tax, whether we benefit for it or not. This is another nightmare, a runaway gun. And then another for cost. And then another one of my community members who posed a question earlier, what's going to be done to abate the sewage concerns, the access to our homes, driving to our properties, while during, for the duration of this project. And then, is this going to create the kind of traffic, even though it might be only community sized traffic nightmare that we see with the water, like we see with the water main, where now we have to drive around 3 other streets. Now we have to do all this other stuff. There's so many other different impacts that this has. Again, I can't stress one of my neighbors suggestions enough that maybe, y'all should get out here and take a look at this thing and see what you're really asking of us, see what really happens. As he said, get your paint can, your paint marker out and see what this really looks like, because it seems like you're going to tear up this whole neighborhood. We're going to have a nightmare of a situation in this currently peaceful community of people who live here and understand that, look, the king tides are the issue. The storm runoff is not the issue. The king tides are a pain, for the people who have to live with them. As a community member, I don't want them to suffer any more than the next guy, but it seems like they are willing to trade that, or do something, that does not involve digging up half of the neighborhood. There has to be a better solution to this. And a state regulation is a regulation. It's a law written, a statute written somewhere that says that you can't do this. Why can't we apply for an exception or an exemption or what have you? The Coast Guard has, for instance, excursion permits when vessels want to carry more people or passengers on a trip than you're typically allowed on a small passenger vessel. And why is it that we have not had a public forum on this that's an open discourse forum, so you can see the people that are
interrupt. Excuse me, if I can interrupt for a moment. We did have a public meeting that we advertised and sent out notices through social media and everything on February 10th. We put out signs in the neighborhood. We went on the radio and talked about it. So there was a public meeting to introduce this project to the entire community. We certainly did not have as many people there as we have on this now, but there was a meeting and it was advertised. This meeting had a specific purpose. It was for the people from whom we need easements, and that is why those were the people who were contacted. There was no attempt to hide anything or evade or not be transparent. This had a specific purpose. Additionally, I believe you said you live on Ligum Vitae. Ligum Vitae is not in the project area. So, you would not have received a notice. The developed portion of Ligum Vitae where there are homes is not part of the project area. I think the issue of going to the state for a waiver, they do not provide them. Erin Dede has spoken at length to our commission about getting the stormwater regulations waived, because they did ask that and we did investigate that. It's not something that they're willing to entertain. Maybe sometime in the future with lots of lobbying, you may be able to be successful, but that is not something that we can do for the purposes of these projects. It's not a simple waiver. So we understand that you are not in support of this project. Duly noted. You will have, if you're in the project area, which I don't believe you are, if you're on Ligum Vitae, you will have an opportunity to vote on it. But at this point, we want to use the rest of the time that we have to answer any remaining questions that people have about easements. Staff is available. You can email us if you have further questions. And that we will have future meetings. But tonight we want to just address any remaining questions with respect to the easements.
Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower all the raised hands, and then I'm going to ask for individuals to raise their hand if they have a question regarding the easements only. I have a raised hand from, okay. Kelly Stamets, please unmute.
Yes, it's in reference to the easement. And I spoke earlier. I live on Valencia, own a home on Valencia, and we have not received a letter or any form of communication about the easement. Was it sent out certified mail or
what address? What is your address on Valencia?
It's 1045.
You are further north than the project.
According to the map here, that's very difficult to determine. So I appreciate that. Okay.
Yes. That's why you did not receive a letter, because we don't need anything from you.
Okay, let me give you some advice. With your map, maybe you can put the end address on, on the end of Valencia or something like that.
Sure.
Because it's very, very difficult to determine where that red line stops.
Understood. 1035 is the northernmost parcel in the project.
Okay. So real quick, still, if we're not in the project, we're not charged for the project.
No, sir.
Okay. That's you've clarified a lot for me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next speaker is Kayla S. Please unmute your microphone.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Thank you guys for answering all these questions. I know it's been a little bit of a longer meeting. I just want to address the point previously made, I believe it was Kelly, and with the prior speaker, Judith. We really have not heard any wind of any of these projects at all. And we're just really asking for some transparency here, notifications, anything. Honestly, I have not heard anything on the radio, nothing via email, nothing via mail. It's kind of sad that we have to receive word of mouth, for this project when they've had surveyors here the last, few months ago. No one knew of anything happening. And I'm guaranteed the majority of this neighborhood has no idea, especially the ones that are involved with this project that will be affected, that will have the assessments. And this is something that we need transparency with, and we're asking for that. And I am aware of the project across the street, by US, across US 1 with the Twin Lakes neighborhood. Something similar has gone on, and it is a war zone there. I really, really plead with you guys to honestly reconsider this whole project, because I will tell you right now, I speak on behalf of my family, but I will say that most of our neighborhood, fellow neighborhood neighbors here are not in favor of this project, and it is a massive waste of time, to say the least. I will say that. And I just thank you for your time. Thank you guys for putting in, the time and effort to address all these questions. But bottom line, I will say that this is a huge waste of the county's time, your time, and it honestly is stressing out a lot of, the neighbors that are aware. We made aware some of our neighbors that are also affected with this project, and they have no clue. They weren't notified as well. So please, we're just asking for some transparency here. And, thank you guys for your time. That's all I'm going to say.
Sure. And I appreciate that. And one of the reasons we've been asking people to put their emails in the chat, or, when you signed in, is we are trying to collect contact information from people. As we said tonight, the letters were sent out to a target audience, only from those from whom we need an easement. So if you didn't receive a letter, it's not because we were trying to not be transparent. It's we don't need an easement from you, so we presumed you didn't have any questions about the easements. The first public meeting that we had, as I said, we did advertise social media. There was an article in the newspaper, the newspaper in the Upper Keys about it. As we, every meeting that we've had, we have asked people to leave their contact information so that we can set up an email group so that we can send notices out by email, which we will do as well for future meetings that are group meetings. Again, as we said, no intent to exclude anyone, but this meeting was targeted to the easement owners, and that was why they were the only ones who received notice. But we will definitely in future meetings, and certainly when we need to have people vote, we want everyone there. It doesn't help us to not get the word out. And then, as I say, having done many construction projects at my time at the county, it is always difficult. It's not pleasant. Usually people enjoy the benefits of it when it's done. So there is an upside to it. But we do understand that it's an inconvenience to have a project in your neighborhood.
Yeah, I wish she wouldn't have hung up so quickly. I wanted to give her like the good news when you told her what her address was and tell her she's not in the project limits or something like that.
I don't know.
I feel like
But,
that's more fun to do that. So
okay.
All right, we have one more raised hand from Carrie.
Sure.
Carrie, please unmute your microphone.
Hi, guys. I'm back. Sorry. The easement question. I heard John, my neighbor, ask someone if it was 2 feet more on the easement. But what I'm understanding to widen the road is they need, correct me if I'm wrong, from the edge of Petty Camp Road into the Valencia properties is about 35 feet.
No.
what address are you, Carrie? What's your address?
I'm at 987 Valencia, where you're gonna put all that garbage. Go ahead.
So you're north of Mahogany. The right of way there varies between 15 and 20 feet wide.
Okay, so John is next door to me. He asked the question 2 feet. Where I'm looking at a telephone pole. You've seen it if you've driven this road. You have to move that telephone pole how many feet towards my home?
Want to bring that up, Greg
Let me bring up the,
Yeah, I'm trying to.
or Juliana?
Julia.
give me a second.
Okay.
Good question, right? And then the funny part is Eric Simon's at the end of Valencia. So what you're saying is you're just going to widen us and then it's going to go into a little tiny street at the end of the street. So even though they're not giving up their easement, you're not going to widen the entire road?
Part of the reason why the road needs to be widened is, well, when we raise a road, address a road, we need to bring it up to the current standards. But
Yes,
we're
that's not my
also,
question. That's not
we're
my
also,
question. My question is, are you going to widen the entire Valencia Road, including Eric Simon's property, at the stop sign on the corner?
I
He's been there
understand your
forever.
question.
Okay, answer that.
Another part of the reason why we have to widen it is we're putting a barrier wall around the lower part of it, so that if two cars meet, there will no longer be the ability to move over. So the road north of the project area is not currently scheduled to be widened. But we will address that.
Right here, where the state Pennicamp mangroves are in front of me, which I don't want them to be cut down, but I would say that would make more sense. You're saying like the 3 last houses on this street going north, we're going to have to try to figure out where to go? It doesn't make any sense. And then the other question is go back to where will this telephone land in my yard? What part of it will be in the easement? Because it'll be a road now, and they're not going to leave a telephone pole in the middle of the road. So how many feet are we actually moving the telephone pole towards my home? John, I hope you're listening.
And Juliana, I'm not sure you're in the right spot. It's at
right.
005454000. So down more.
Okay, down more. All right.
Right there in the center there. 545 400. Yeah.
545 400. Okay. So your question.
Where she's going to move her telephone pole on the right-hand side, I think, over there.
This one. So this is your question. How much are we shifting back?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
About 6 feet back.
So right in my yard. Correct?
Yes.
Correct.
So my fence has to come down. My mailbox has to come down. My sewer has to come out. My electric has to come out. My water has to come out. My pavers have to come up. Everything has to move. And who's going to pay for that? Sure, it's probably going to be me.
Right. The utilities will be relocated as part of the project. Yeah.
Okay, so who's going to take the fencing out to put your road there? John, you hear that? It's not 2 feet.
He asked a different question. I believe he asked.
He's on the same road, one house down.
He asked elevation. He asked elevation, like how high the road was, not more things are moving. Or where
no, he he asked how many feet into the property was the
The
easement going to go?
asphalt would be, which is 2
Correct.
feet.
The property line, the county right of way is here. So technically, at your property, we're not adding pavement because the pavement ends here. But we do have to relocate the pole behind the new asphalt. But
And you have to move my fence.
Juliana, can you let me share this screen? Juliana, can you stop
Uh-huh.
sharing for a second?
You can take
Yeah.
over.
I think you have to end it.
Okay, give me 1 second. Let me stop sharing. Stop share. Okay.
Oh, there
Take
we go.
over.
Yeah. So I think what she's asking is, this is her property. So she has a fence here, and then the gate, and then the existing sewer, and then the electric pole. So Carrie, I guess to answer your question, and Juliana mentioned, it's going to be 6 feet. So the pole will be
Right on
approximately
my fence.
right here where it is. So then we're going to have to move your fence back. The fence is going to have to move back. And Juliana, based on the dimensions, tell me where the end of if we're 6 feet, I'm doing the dimensions on the fly here to show you exactly where potentially your fence will have to go back to. So probably your fence will be about right here where my mouse is, and cut back here, because then your swale, if I draw the line here for you, just for purposes, you're going to basically have this retaining wall that's going to go along here.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have a road that's going to slope down
Into my property?
down into your right away here, and then what you're going to have is a shallow swale, and then that shallow swale will come up, and obviously,
So when I pull out my lowrider truck that I drive normally, I have a lowrider truck that's an inch from the ground. Are you going to pay for the damages?
It won't be in this driveway. You'll still have your driveway. So you'll still have this gated driveway, 24-foot wide driveway. This will be on this side of your driveway. So you're still going to have the main driveway access that you currently maintain.
But my fence will go back. It'll have to move back.
Your fence will move back. Yeah, that's it. Yes. Yeah, we'll have to move
And
back.
then how much are they going to pay me per square foot for my property for me to move my fence back?
We are not paying for property.
Okay.
The grant does not pay for property, so we are not proposing to pay people for an easement.
Does it pay for damage to property? Like if they say my foundation cracks or something sinks, things like that? Or is that something I have to get a litigation attorney for if that goes on?
I don't understand your foundation of your house.
Oh, yeah.
Why would that crack for
because they're digging cap rock, right? It's like concrete. Boom, boom,
I understand,
boom,
but
boom,
we're not doing anything to your.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how.
Yeah, I think she's trying to say, like, so the project itself will be utilizing the existing subbase where we can. There is some muck here that we will have to remove underneath this road. So when we construct it, this road is actually sitting on muck material. So it's not actually sitting on cap rock is what you think. So
I know it's not on cap rock. I told you that earlier. It's on Moro. It's on crap. Yes, that's why it's thinking.
Yeah, so they'll have to remove this portion of the roadway. So there won't be a lot of like heavy drilling or heavy, cap rock removal. Your cap rock is, I think, roughly in this area, probably, 10, 15 feet deep.
So when you remove the road, you won't be cutting the road?
Yeah, you'll be cutting the road, but again, you're not going to hit cap rock.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. You're not going to hit a cap rock layer where you're going to have to like scrape the layer down to, when we construct that pump station, when it's 35 feet deep, then there will be some cap rock that'll have to be removed there. But we're talking, removing probably 3 to 4 feet of material, which is going to be a lot softer material and not a lot of heavy, moving things around.
And who pays for the removal and putting my fence back and fixing the
that will be done as part of the project.
Okay. And then one more question, I'll let you go. I know it's getting late. The
Okay.
lignin Vitey guy that we shut down, that we weren't very nice to. I thought he was very nice. Anyways, isn't the pump station going in his front yard?
No.
No.
The pump station is going on a section of Ligum Vitey that is not developed. There are no houses around it.
Right here.
Yeah, that's a wetland, no?
No, not on that side.
Not up
So
to
is that on Lignin Vitey?
So Ligum
That's
Vitey, no.
the undeveloped part of Ligum Vitey.
Yeah, he lives over here. His property was, I believe, this one here, which he's not even in the project limits as Judy mentioned. So he's not part of the project. So the pump station is going to be over here.
Are you guys letting the people know that live right across from that pump station that they'll have a pump station located across from their home? Will they get a note or a letter?
They're in the project limits. If they're in the project limits, they will get notified of it and have been a part of the process.
Is that part of the project limits where you're putting the pump station? Are they part of it, the two houses across the street?
I believe this does this little intersection good,
Yes.
but I don't recall it off the top of my head. But yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Stop sharing now.
There are no more raised hands.
Okay.
Trying to look through the questions on the scroll through to see if there's anything on there.
And easements.
Yeah. Well, and we can go through those, and we have emails, and we can address any other questions.
So I just want to say again, this meeting was only for easements. It doesn't mean we can't have another meeting with everybody. We can notify everybody by letter. We can have another meeting. What we need to do immediately, though, is try to get through this easement section process and try to get as many easements as we can, so we can move the project along. But we definitely will have another meeting, at least another meeting, if not more, with all the residents, and we can hand walk around flyers. We were working with a couple of residents there. Jack Cardis was his name, and I believe another one. I thought you guys had internal website that some of the information was being posted. Maybe that's not accurate anymore, but we were trying to work with as many people as we knew. It's just we didn't have, contact information for a lot of you. So when we do it next time, we're going to reach out to all of you with emails, and we'll be able to forward around the meeting notices, and we'll have more meetings to talk to you. And the final vote will definitely be by letter in the mail. Everyone will get one. You'll probably get two. We'll mail one to the property address at the property appraiser's office, and we'll mail one to the local, because we want to make sure you get it, because I know a lot of people aren't at the local address part of the time. That's kind of why we held this virtual meeting tonight, because we weren't sure where everybody was tonight. We didn't want to limit the people that weren't in town, and so we want to be able to have everybody, no matter where you were in the world, able to attend tonight. And next time we can host it maybe a hybrid, where we have it both in person and virtual, so that we can get even more people to attend.
I just saw, Rhonda, I see a question that just came in. When is the final vote? We don't know that yet. The reason is we need to get through the process that Rhonda described earlier. And most particularly, once we submit our plans and all to the grant agencies, Florida Department of Emergency Management and FEMA, they can take from 2 to 10 months to review them. They might ask us for more information. Only after they have reviewed them all and satisfied themselves will they give us a notice to proceed with construction. Then we would get a bid and the final costs. So, and that would be when we would take a vote. So we really can't give you a date, because it is dependent on the grant agencies and how long they take for their process. We will give you notice. We will make sure that we notify everyone.
We were planning on submitting this to the regulatory and granting agencies in May, correct, Judy?
Yes, we need to in May, or in order to be eligible to get the grant funds. That's a hard deadline. They want the deliverables so they can begin the benefit cost analysis. So we will be submitting in May.
So there could be, like Judy said, there could be a 2-month delay. There could be a 6-month delay. We don't know. It could be the beginning of next year before we hear back from them, or before they've made that decision on the cost benefit analysis, because it's such a big project. I know they have a lot of number crunching to do, but that doesn't mean you can't reach out to us. Doesn't mean we you know, we can't answer your questions in the meantime. Doesn't mean we can't have another meeting if you so desire, but it's just part of the process. I don't want people to think that you were left out of the process, that we were aiming for specific people to try to get a vote. That's not what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
We're just trying to get a technical process on the way here, the easement, so that we could continue with the rest of the process and continue outreach and things like that. And if you have your neighbor, reach out to your neighbor, have them, you know, send us their email address, because the more we collect, the better it is, and the more, you know, we don't have to rely on just written letters, because they take a long time to get out. Sometimes they take I know I do a lot of canal work, and sometimes those letters take a couple or 2, 3 weeks to get out, and sometimes they don't make it at all. I don't know where they go, but I don't like to rely on just written letters. I like to rely on in-person meetings and emails and everything else.
So thank you all.
Yeah.
If you have any additional questions in the future, call us, email us. We want to answer them. So thank you.
All right. Thank you all again.
Thank you.
All right.